All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Generations Fall of Cybertron Swindle. And yeah, this figure is not great. I've talked about it in my last couple videos, but there was something going on at the time where a couple of the toy lines had a pretty massive dip in quality, and the Fall of Cybertron toy line from Generations was definitely one of those. And the Bruticus folks in general, I think, really suffered from that because, like, you know, it was already kind of an ambitious project that they were trying to do with these guys anyway. Like, this was like one of the first times in Generations that they were really taking a crack at like proper, you know, combiners, and especially ones with like full integration of like the hands and feet. Since, like, you know, they hadn't really done combiners since like Energon, you know, like there was like power core combiners and stuff like that, but you know, most of the limb guys didn't transform. So it was kind of an ambitious project to start with, and probably the worst time that they could have chose to do it. But yeah, as a result of that, all of the individual members of the Bruticus team and the combined mode, honestly, are pretty crummy figures, in my opinion. Also, infamously at the time, there were a few different versions of these guys where they had like the San Diego Comic-Con version that had like the nice, you know, metallic colors, and then later they did the Japanese version, which still had more game accurate colors, and then there was the regular Hasbro release where they basically made all of them like really saturated bright colors, I guess, to make them stand out more on the shelf. So swapping out his usual tan, Swindle is kind of this bright yellow, and I feel like it's probably not, it's not so bad on him or like Brawl. It's kind of egregious on like Blastoff and Vortex, but because they're really like not their color schemes kind of at all. But yeah, he's, you know, I don't think it's too bad with him. Like, you still get the point across with the yellows and purples as opposed to the tans and purples. But yeah, he looks okay in alt mode. He rolls pretty decently well here. He's got some nice detail on the wheels, which would have been nice to see picked out in like, you know, painted detail, which I think maybe it was on the San Diego Comic-Con version. I can't quite remember. But, you know, it looks like his alt mode from the game, more or less. You know, it's a Cybertronian mode, so you get away with a little bit. It definitely has a few gaps there where you can see straight through it, which is kind of unfortunate, but it's definitely not his worst mode here. He does come with this little gun. Now, when they re-release these guys in the next year as like the Ruination team, like the Wreckers, this mold was reused as Roadbuster, and he came with a big, you know, like extra gun like all of those guys did. But Swindle just comes with the little handgun here, which is okay. It kind of looks like his gun from the game, and to store it, you can just peg it on top here, which usually bugs me, you know, in terms of just like making the vehicle mode look worse by putting a gun on it. But with Cybertronian modes, I feel like you know, it works fairly well. But yeah, in terms of comparisons in this mode, here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe, just for an average modern deluxe comparison. Here he is again with the Vortex mold as Whirl from, you know, the Wreckers team. The only other, you know, one of these guys that I have. I didn't end up going in on the whole team because it looked bad, and, you know, it really has not aged well, and it wasn't really that great at the time. So, you know, I just have these two, but because I just wanted their individual characters, because like really at the time, like, we hadn't gotten like an updated Swindle at all. Like, this was before Combiner Wars, so we hadn't gotten that version. I guess the best stand-in for Swindle up until this point probably would have been like Cybertron Swindle, who doesn't really look that much like the original characters. So like, yeah, this was kind of like, oh, I bought this guy to have a Generation Swindle literally at all, but it's not really what I would want out of a Swindle figure. But yeah, that's what they look like together, for whatever that's worth. And then, speaking of which, here he is with Combiner Wars Swindle, so you can see the next version that they did. Allegedly, according to leaked listings, we're maybe getting a Swindle next year, but they've also on the leaked listings shown that we're getting Superion, and he's the only Combaticon listed, so maybe they're just starting that early for the next year, or maybe it's just a different standalone Swindle, like a new version of animated Swindle or something like that. I don't know, couldn't say. I like this figure relatively well. I think that definitely, you know, if we did a new Bruticus, we could do it better than the Combiner Wars version, but I like this figure. I don't really love the alt mode, but, you know, I'm content with him for now. But yeah, he's miles better than him, obviously, especially, you know, even just insofar as if you want an Earth-ish Swindle, this doesn't really do the job But yeah, that's what they look like together. To get onto transformation, we'll start off just by going to his limb modes, just because they're pretty simple. For the leg mode, you pretty much just flip up his robot mode feet, and then you want to unlock this section here. These two tabs in vehicle mode go into these upper slots on these sections, and then you want to plug them into these lower slots for the combined mode here, which can be kind of annoying to maneuver sometimes, honestly. Yeah, you pretty much just like have to bend the whole thing for it. I forget if there's anything else you're supposed to. I mean, you flip out the combiner. Oh, that's right. This whole thing is connected to the combiner peg, so you have to actually flip out the combiner port first, so that this has the proper, like angle to actually plug in there. So yeah, there we go. There he is in his leg mode. You can kind of just take the gun and plug it back in if you want. Yeah, it works relatively well. It's not his worst mode, like I said, but yeah, works okay. And then for arm mode, basically you just unpeg this whole section here and kind of bring him down at the hips, but leave them pegged together. And I don't know, I forget what you're supposed to do with the arms, but I think you just leave them kind of, floating up here like this, and then bring down the combiner peg. Like I said, I never had the combiner, and I never used this guy. I would never use him as an arm anyway. But then you just flip this forward, flip the feet in, and then he actually has two separate hands here, depending on which side you want it to be. Oh, that's right. You don't rotate it, because he ends up with like the gorilla arm in the combined mode, which is kind of annoying. Yeah, honestly, I don't remember what you do with all this, but that's the general gist. Whatever. But yeah, it's nice that he comes with the two separate hands so that you can, do either arm. But really, I feel like having these guys be Scramble City on top of doing the whole combiner thing was more ambitious than it was needed to be. He really only needed to be the leg, and he suffers a lot from just wasting engineering budget on adding the arm stuff in there. So, but yeah, to continue on with the transformation, basically you just untab the legs, flip the feet back out. You bring these sections up like this, and then bring this whole section, you kind of push the head out from in here. Oh, you want to rotate this around. Yeah, it was rotated the other way for, got that one hip, for vehicle mode. And then you bring this down, and then these two tabs on the grill section will go into these slots on the chest here to lock that in place. Again, you want to leave these up. They don't really stay super well. Then you flip around these shoulder pads around the wheels here, and then last but not least, you take these little smokestack sections and just flip them around on his arm so that they sit the other way. And yep, there we have Swindle in his robot mode. And yeah, from the front he looks okay. I mean, the proportions are pretty wild. Like he's got these kind of like tiny little arms. His thighs are much bigger than, or his his calves are much bigger than his thighs, which is not unique to him in terms of Transformers. Like that's a pretty common thing, but it still doesn't help him a whole lot. And yeah, he's mostly just completely hollow on the back. Even his like little forearms are hollow. Like I said, there really wasn't a lot of plastic to these guys, and the engineering was not the strongest either. But yeah, like I said, he looks okay from the front, but I feel like from most other angles, it's just, he's just kind of a hollow shell of a thing, isn't he? In terms of articulation, the head is on a swivel here. It looks decently close to his head skull from the game, though it being all black, though accurate is, it makes it kind of hard to see detail there. You can also like kind of bob it up and down on that transformation joint. The shoulders are on ball joints. They're also on these weird armatures, which like don't really like solidly lock into place in any way. They're supposed to just kind of like sit there. But yeah, the shoulders are on ball joints that can rotate around, go out to the side only about that far before things start bumping into the shoulders there. And then his elbows are on ball joints as well, which gives him a bicep swivel and about 90 degrees of bend there. Nothing at the wrist. They're just painted. He's got a waist joint. Hips are on ball joints. This one hip is like really scary stiff, unfortunately. I didn't even really notice that until now. It just feels like that just happened out of nowhere, but whatever. But yeah, hips are on ball joints that can go forward and back and out to the side. He's got a thigh swivel. He does have a pretty decent knee bend, but this part here ends up bumping into, like the crotch piece. So he only gets like a little bit over 90 before you start having to bend his leg in weird ways. And like I said, because the thigh is so small compared to the lower leg, it's not really doing a whole lot there. And then the feet, you can kind of just tilt down for transformation. Again, they're just kind of sculpted in that, A stance that they were doing at the time in lieu of having ankle joints properly. Obviously, you can give him his gun here, which he looks okay holding. And unfortunately, there's really no way to store it. That kind of blows. I mean, conceivably, they could have just like completely hauled out this section, so this could just peg in there, but no, they didn't do that. So I guess you could like flip down the hand and like do that. That's okay, actually. I mean, it kind of messes with his knee articulation a little bit, but not a whole lot. So I don't know, you could do that, but it doesn't have any official place to store, unfortunately. Yeah, in terms of comparisons in this mode, here he is again with Sideswipe, just for that standard size comparison. So you can see he's actually a fairly tall deluxe here, but, he's also fairly empty, so it's not like you're getting more mass. Like, he's really light compared to some modern figures. Here he is again with the Vortex mold in Whirl here, and yeah, I mean, like, neither of these guys are great. I feel like this guy makes this guy look like kind of a rock star. I like this mold is much better than this one, but neither of them are all that fantastic. And then here he is again with the much better Combiner Wars Swindle, who's the proper colors, turns into the proper vehicle mode, looks more like his robot mode. I mean, this guy's, he's supposed to be the Fall of Cybertron version, which was a little bit of a, derivation from the G1 Swindle design anyway, but still just a much better figure in general. But there's still room to improve here. But yeah, that's what they look like together. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to say about Swindle. He's pretty bad, honestly. Like, he's not a great figure. I don't know what's with that. Like, that really just came out of nowhere. Just all of a sudden his leg ball joint tightened up like a lot. Yeah, he's not, I don't think, just by looking at the others, I don't think he's the worst of the Fall of Cybertron Combaticon molds. I would say probably that Brawl or Onslaught is the worst, and then he's kind of just in the middle, with Vortex and Blastoff being the better of the five. But like I said, none of them are great. They don't make a great combined mode. Their vehicle modes are all okay, but they're going for the Fall of Cybertron design. So if you're looking for like an Earth team of Combaticons, they don't really work for that. But yeah, I'm sure that eventually they'll get around to doing like a new like gamer edition version of the Fall of Cybertron Combaticons, so you can get that version of Bruticus. But for now, this is the one we got, and it's not great. Yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Without further ado, here we have Transformers Generations Fall of Cybertron Swindle.